In this learning objective, we're going to look at the range of exponential functions. All right, so as a reminder, the range is just a definition. It's all the y values that we get out of our function. So all the y values that our function is going to hit is the range. And for a lot of functions, your range is everything. You end up getting all the y values, but for exponential functions, you just get a limited set of y values. All right, so let's look at these graphs. We have f of x equals 2 to the x, that's in red. 2 to the x plus 4 is in green. And 2 to the x minus 3 is in blue. All right, so we look at f of x equals 2 to the x. All right, what do we see? We see as we go to the left, all right, it levels off and it never goes below this horizontal line. And then after that, it shoots up and gets really big. So what y values do we get? We get all the y values that are bigger than 0, right? Anything below the x-axis, all these negative y values down here, we never get because it always stays above that line. All the positive y values, well, this goes up really quickly and we get all those ones. So for the original function 2 to the x, we just get all the positive y values. Y is greater than 0. When we switch to the next one, y equals 2 to the x plus 4, this is our green graph, and you can see this one levels off here, and that's at 4. And it goes up really big after that, so for that one, our range is going to be y is bigger than 4. And our last one, our blue one, you can see it levels off here, and that's at negative 3, but we get everything else that's bigger than that, so y is bigger than negative 3. And what's the relationship between these ranges and our functions? Well, if you see there's a 4 here and a 4 there, and there's a minus 3 there and a minus 3 there. So basically I'm just taking the original graph, and this plus 4 moves it up 4, which just changes my range. Just instead of starting at 0, it starts at 4. Minus 3, it just takes this and moves it down 3. So instead of starting at 0, I start at negative 3. So this adding or subtracting at the end of my exponential just changes it from starting at 0 to starting at some other point. All right, so what is the range of this going to be? 1/3 to the x minus 2. Well, 1/3 to the x would just be a normal exponential graph. It would look something like this. And its range would be all the positive numbers. But then when I subtract 2 from that, it just moves it down 2, and then that would be the graph, something like that. So my range starts at everything bigger than 0, but if I move it down, now it's starting at negative 2. So my range is everything bigger than negative 2, and it's just coming from that number there. I find the range of 3 times 5 raised to the x plus 7. All right, so there's 3 different numbers in this one, and one of them is going to tell me how the range is changing. All right, so the first one is 5 to the x. All that really tells me is that my original function has this shape. And that one, its range is bigger than 0. Then the 3, all that changes is my initial value. So instead of starting here at 1, I would start up here at 3, but it would still have the same general shape. It just starts at 3 instead of starting at 1. So that also doesn't change the range. And then the plus 7 moves everything up 7. So instead of leveling off down here, now it's going to level off up there at 7 and have a shape like that. So my final range has to do with this plus or minus at the end. My range is everything bigger than 7. All right, because this function here starts at 0, all right, just a general exponential by itself, but then adding 7 to it makes it start at 7. And that's one, negative 2 times 3 to the x plus 2. All right, so this negative 2 is actually going to change stuff. So your first guess might be that our answer is y is bigger than 2, because there's a 2 there. All right, but when we have a negative in front of our function, it's going to take our original 3 to the x graph, like that, and the negative is going to make all these values negative. So it's going to flip this graph, and now it's going to look like that. All right, so negatives flip your graph, and then it moves it up 2. So afterwards, I move it up 2, and it'll look like that. So now instead of being everything bigger than 2, because it's going the opposite direction because of that negative sign, my answer is actually everything is less than 2. All right, so that is my final answer there. All right, so instead of being 2 and everything up, it's 2 and everything down. All right, so this 2 is still important, but this negative means it's less than instead of greater than. As I try this one on your own, I find the range of this exponential. And you should find that it's just y is bigger than 1. All right, so our important value is 1. All right, we know 1 is going to be part of the answer because that's that plus or minus we have at the end. And since there's no negative, it's going to start at 1 and just go up from there. If I change this problem slightly and put a negative at the front, then it would be y is less than 1. All right, but with no negative, it's just y is bigger than whatever number is there. All right, so to demonstrate your mastery of this learning objective, you're going to do a skill check. And the skill check is going to have 3 problems on it, and exactly like the problems we did, one will have a negative sign, so just remember the negative sign. The only thing that changes is you have a less than value. All the other ones you have a greater than value. All right, so that would be your skill check for this learning objective.